Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, Mitch Spinell, Mitchell Bella. Mitch, it's time to head over back now to high school sports action talk. As we get back to it here, we have the end or the near end of both of our regular seasons in Stark and Tuscarawas County. Tournament play is upon us. It's actually started in the girls' side, which we'll get to in a little bit. But for right now, I want to stay on the boys' side because we have our Federal League champions, and I want to hear your side of it because the Jackson Polar Bears will share the title with the Green Bulldogs after the Bulldogs beat Glen Oak, who led for much of this season, Mitch, in the Federal League standings. Green ends up beating them on Friday night, and Jackson beats McKinley to split. Jackson gets its first Federal League title since 2019. I believe Green winning for the first time in over a decade, but congratulations to both the Polar Bears and the Bulldogs for pulling it out this season.
Mitch, you could argue the two best teams in the Federal League. Obviously, with them being co-champions, that is the case. Obviously, you mentioned Glen Oak leading for most of the year. I went to the field house on Friday night to watch Jackson McKinley. Obviously, as a Jackson alum, there was that rooting interest for me, but also just to see if Jackson could win for the first time in 4+ years at the field house. And it wasn't even close. Jackson, Mitch, played lights out. They were you see right there in one of the articles you wrote, Monterubio, 21 points for Jackson. All these starters for Jackson just had a huge game. It started with Anthony Fuline, the junior point guard for Jackson, Mitch. The way he shot the ball, there is no doubt in my mind, and this is going to be tough because I'm probably going to contradict myself here in a second, but there's no doubt in my mind that if Jackson plays the way they did at the field house, they can win their district. Now, it's going to be tough because they would realistically, if you're going on the seeds, advancing by number, would face Stowe, who was the number 1 overall seed in the 3 super districts. But Jackson getting the first Federal League title since 2019, that's big, especially at a school like Jackson. There's always, you don't want to say expectation, but you're supposed to win the Fed. That's always your number 1 goal in any athletic sport at Jackson. They led by 21 points. Mitch Finnefrock in the first quarter hitting a couple big threes, but the way Jackson played, Mitch, it's going to be hard to beat them if they play like that come tournament time. On the flip side for Green, what a game. I actually had somebody there that was texting me updates and I was hearing about it, and I got the video of the last play with Jarrett Taylor being fouled for Green with less than 1 second to play, misses the first, makes the second, puts Green up 50-49. Glen Oak had 0.8 of a second to get a shot off, and it was a half-court heave that wasn't close. Green, with how the season started for them, Mitch, let's keep in mind, let's go all the way back to when we had Coach Mark Kinsley on the show. This was a team that had their first game canceled. This is a team that had to open up their season on the road at Jackson in Federal League play. And the result of that game was Jackson blowing Green out. But you knew that was not what Green was going to be. And they proved that by not only beating Jackson then at Green, but also being able to run the course. They dropped a few Federal League games, but that's just the Federal League, right? Everybody can beat everybody on any given night. And Green put together big stretch runs throughout the season, knocking off Federal League teams, getting back to the top, and them and Jackson shared the Federal League crown. And what makes this so much more interesting, Mitch, the tournament for the boys starts next week. Jackson and Green could meet in the district semifinal at Alliance High School. The 2 co-champions of the Federal League could square off in the district semifinal. And that is going to be insane if it happens. I would expect that gym to be sold out. Obviously, both teams have to get there first. Obviously, this is craziness ensues here. We already saw it in the girls, which I want to make sure we talk about before we send it to our next break in the final segment. But I'm already excited knowing that's a potential matchup. But congrats to Green. Congrats to Jackson. Obviously, I have a ton of respect for Coach Mark Kinsley over at Green. He's a phenomenal person, a phenomenal coach, just a better human. And obviously, always happy to see Jackson be able to clinch the Federal League title. But they were the 2 best teams. Jackson got over the hump this year in terms of beating McKinley. We had alluded to that early in January, Mitch. That was a team the senior class had never beat in the 3 years prior. They beat them twice. And realistically, if you would have said, hey, they're going to blow them out one time and have a close game, I would have thought they'd blow them out at Jackson, have a close game at the field house, but it was the opposite. And I just can't say enough about the performance from Kyle Monterubio, Mitch. This is a sophomore for Jackson that I personally thought covering the team and calling all their home games, there was a lot of expectations for a sophomore. The last one that really delivered would have been Kyle Young at Jackson. And obviously, when you're 6'7" and you can bring the ball up the court and shoot the three, I get it. When you're someone like Monterrubio who's 6'1", a little different. Mitch, this kid has so much potential, and I don't want to put expectations on the kid because that's not fair to somebody like that. And obviously, you need to stay healthy. But this is a kid that, if he's healthy, is going to be a problem for the next 2 years in the Federal League. And same with Green. I mean, Jarrett Taylor, Rollison, Bundalo. I mean, these are all players that come back. These are two teams, Mitch, and Glen Oak included. Those three teams should be at the top of the Federal League again next year, battling it out for who the Federal League champion is. And obviously, Glen Oak falls one game short of the title. Mitch, preseason, I told you, McKinley, I thought was the team to beat just off the sheer numbers and returning experience coming back for head coach Vlahovic. These three teams now are going to be a force to be reckoned with, not only next year, but now in the tournament. But Green's going to play Lake, and we'll dive into those matchups next week, I'm sure. But I am so excited for the boys' side, and I know you had a phenomenal weekend in the IVC.
Yeah, well, the IVC Showcase on the boys' side happened this Saturday at Claymont, and many of the games seem to be going as scheduled for the South Division. The South went 5-0 in their first matchups against their northern counterparts. Now, some of the games were closer than others. The first couple of ones, you had Ridgewood beating Newcomerstown pretty handily. Newcomerstown, unfortunately, ending the regular season a goose egg in the win column. Claymont christening their hosting of the IVC Showcase, the win over Conotton Valley. Matthew Jackson having a breakout game in that with 14 points. You also had Tusky Valley beating East Canton, while Highland got down early against Central Catholic and then just stormed the rest of the way. There was a close one in the third to last game between Indian Valley and Strasburg. Indian Valley, one of the highest scoring teams in the league. Strasburg, a very good defensive-minded school. And the Braves got out to a lead at halftime. Strasburg cut it down to 2 early in the third. Gage Moore, who is one of the top players for Strasburg this season, got hot late in the game, but he was knocked out of the game with an injury, and then Indian Valley just took over from there. And then you had Garaway beating Buckeye Trail, and then Malvern salvaging the day for the North with the first North victory at the Showcase since 2020. That game was a 64-51 final over Sandy Valley. We saw a very close game the previous Tuesday with Malvern beat Garaway in overtime to hand the Pirates their first and only home loss of this season. So Malvern really making a statement here. They are now 20-1 on the season, 12-0 in IVC North play, 13-0 against 14-0 against overall opponents from the IVC South. And you got guys like Jalen Barino performing again, 18 points, 10 of 13 from the free throw line. He got to the line so many times as he got into the paint. Mitch Miner, 15 points, 3 3-pointers. Dylan Phillips was our player of the game that night. He was a 14-point shooter, 4 3-pointers, one of those sneakily good scores for Malvern. And it's a very impressive victory for a Malvern squad that's going to look very dangerous in the upcoming tournament play.
I'm excited to see where Malvern goes in this tournament because they have had a great season. Obviously, you mentioned some of the names there, Mitch Miner being one of them. That is a team, Mitch, that for a couple times now has seen their season cut short in terms of the postseason, not being able to get over a hump against a couple teams. But this is still a team that has experience returning from last year. Obviously, you know them more than I do. That is a team that I wouldn't want to play, in their district. And I'm excited to see how far Malvern can go. That's definitely a team that I've kept tabs on a little bit. That's down in the IVC, and a team that I'm very intrigued with. That's for sure.
No doubt. And the girls actually start sectional play today. A couple of teams starting off in my area, at least. You have Minerva taking on John Glenn, Buckeye Trail taking on Ridgewood in the Division 3 section, while in Division 4, you have Hannibal River taking on Bridgeport. The Minerva John Glenn game is Division 2. Now, your side has already had a couple of games already under the way. Division 1 Northeast 1 bracket, McKinley all over Euclid, 48-6, which is a very rare score for a basketball game. And of course, Hoover will take on Menor tonight. The Vikings will take on Menor. Hoover is a 19 seed, so they'll be on the road for this game.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the McKinley Euclid score. McKinley did not allow more than 2 points in a quarter in that contest. Really, it was never in doubt after the first quarter.
So basically, like one of their quarters was scoreless, is what you're saying.
Basically,
Yeah.
Mitch, there was a big upset in the girls bracket already in sectional semifinals. It was in Northeast District 3. That is the Ravenna district, which the Jackson girls are in.
Mhm.
And it was thought, just going by seeding, which obviously you can't do, but if you were just moving the better seed across the bracket in terms of what you'd expect to happen, there was a thought Jackson was going to play Lake, a team that beat Jackson twice in the regular season.
Yes.
That will not be happening, Mitch. The 24th seeded Hudson Lady Explorers from Hudson High School knocked off the number 8 seed Lake Blue Streaks on Saturday at Lake High School, 47-45. Hudson outscored Lake 13-7 in the fourth quarter. And that is just a game that I don't think anybody expected it, but that is the type of chaos that we have to be ready for now in terms of high school playoffs. I mean, you're going to see teams that are severely underseeded, potentially overseeded. Yes, I know the record indicates what they are in terms of a seed, but that doesn't always come back to show you how good or how bad a team's season really was because of the type of league they played in. Here's Hudson now, Mitch. They will take on Louisville at Louisville this Thursday in the sectional championship. The winner of that game will face the winner of Nordonia and Jackson in the district semifinal on Tuesday, February 21st at 8 o'clock at Ravenna High School. So already we see a big upset in the girls' side of things. We'll see what Hoover can do at Menor tonight. That is going to be a very tough task for Hoover. They're a very young team, another team that had a first-year head coach after a coaching change in the offseason. I wouldn't put it past them, though, if they're able to go up there and beat Menor, but it's a hard thing to do to go to an opposing gym and win come playoff time. But this is going to be fun, and I'm hoping maybe we get a chance to break down the brackets a little more and some teams come our show later in the week. But this is going to get fun now.
No doubt. And the Hudson thing is interesting because the Explorers were 10-12 on the season. I was expecting well, compared to the seed, I was expecting a lower record, but another team that got a sectional semi-final win, I believe, yeah, would be Perry over Brush, 44-37. So the Lady Panthers remaining alive despite some of their struggles this year. They will take on East Lake North, number 15 seed, this coming Thursday. Some of the other matchups that we had throughout this run, we have Hoban beating Kent Roosevelt 43-33 in the Northeast 2 Division 1 bracket. You'll have Green coming up. They'll take on Stowe Monroe Falls, who is a 7 seed after beating Warren G. Harding. The Massillon Tigers, they'll be back on the floor against, this is an interesting one, 23 versus 4. Shaker Heights Hathaway Brown, the 4 seed, will come in after beating Twinsburg. Northeast 4, you have a couple of teams there, including Barberton, who will take on Brecksville Broadview Heights. In the Northeast 5 bracket, a couple more northern teams along the way. And then in Division 6, or Northeast 6, excuse me, there is no Division 6. Kind of more the same. School's a little bit more north of us, but we'll see a number of teams. Like you said, Jackson, Perry will be advancing. And it's going to be interesting to see where some of these teams will stack up here in the next coming weeks.